The front door had barely opened when the young woman dropped her suitcase onto the porch and whispered with trembling lips, "I have nowhere left to go." Her voice was so fragile that it sounded as though even the afternoon breeze might carry it away. Ethan stared at the stranger standing beneath the bright blue sky, her exhausted eyes holding the kind of heartbreak that only came after losing everything worth fighting for. For a long moment, neither of them moved, but something inside him recognized the loneliness hiding behind her silence. Before we continue, if you believe hope can still be found in the darkest moments, please like this video, leave a comment, share this story with someone who needs encouragement, and subscribe to Ripple of Love. Every act of kindness creates another chance for someone who feels forgotten. It had been almost 4 years since Ethan Mercer, a 34-year-old carpenter, had learned that grief never truly disappeared. It simply found quieter places to hide. Every morning he woke before sunrise inside the farmhouse his late grandfather had built decades earlier. Surrounded by green fields, white fences, and towering maple trees, the house felt peaceful from the outside, yet every room echoed with memories. After losing both his parents within a single year and watching the woman he planned to marry walk away because she couldn't handle his constant sadness, Ethan had slowly convinced himself that solitude was easier than disappointment. He repaired furniture for families across the county during the day, always smiling politely, always returning home before sunset to a dinner eaten alone on the old wooden porch. The woman standing before him looked no older than 28. Her name was Alara Brooks, though Ethan would not learn it until much later. She wore a pale blue dress wrinkled from traveling, her blonde hair loosely tied after what looked like days without proper rest. A single gray suitcase sat beside her, carrying what little remained of her life. She had driven hundreds of miles after discovering that the aunt who promised to help had quietly sold her home and moved overseas without leaving an address. Before that, Alara had spent years caring for her sick father, sacrificing friendships, education, and every personal dream. When he passed away 6 months earlier, unpaid medical debts swallowed nearly everything she owned. The apartment she rented had been emptied that morning after an eviction notice finally expired. Pride had kept her from asking strangers for help until there was simply no other choice. She explained that the old farmhouse had once belonged to her grandmother's childhood friend. A faded letter discovered among family belongings had mentioned that if life ever became unbearable, someone named Walter Mercer would always offer shelter. Neither of them knew Walter had died years before, leaving the property to Ethan. The coincidence felt almost impossible, yet here she was, standing exactly where hope had pointed her. Ethan looked toward the endless daylight stretching across the fields. Bright sunshine illuminated the porch. Birds sang from nearby oak trees, and children could be heard laughing in the distance from neighboring farms. Everything appeared ordinary, yet he sensed that one decision would quietly change 2 broken lives forever. Without fully understanding why, he picked up her suitcase, opened the front door wider, and softly told her that if she truly had nowhere else to go, then she could stay with him until she found her footing again. The following days felt strangely unfamiliar. Ethan had forgotten what another person's footsteps sounded like inside the house. Alara insisted on cleaning the neglected guest room, planting flowers beneath the front windows, and preparing simple homemade meals using vegetables from the garden that Ethan rarely harvested. She thanked him for everything, yet there remained a sadness she carefully concealed whenever she thought he wasn't looking. Sometimes he noticed her staring across the fields with distant eyes, clutching an old photograph of her father before quietly placing it back into her suitcase. Although neither spoke much about the past, silence gradually transformed into understanding. Ethan repaired rocking chairs while Alara painted faded cabinets inside the farmhouse. During warm afternoons, they worked side by side beneath clear blue skies, surrounded by wildflowers and gentle winds carrying the scent of fresh-cut grass. Their conversations remained cautious at first, built upon ordinary topics like weather, recipes, and woodworking, Yet beneath those simple exchanges lay two people slowly discovering that healing often begins long before anyone notices it. Then everything changed. One bright morning, Ethan returned from work to find two expensive black vehicles parked outside his home. A sharply dressed man stood on the porch speaking firmly with Alara, while another examined legal papers. Ethan immediately sensed fear returning to her face. The visitors represented a financial company that had purchased the remaining debt connected to her father's medical expenses. Through legal technicalities, they claimed ownership over several belongings she still possessed, including sentimental family items stored inside her suitcase. Watching strangers treat treasured memories as financial assets shattered something inside Alara. She didn't cry. She simply stood frozen, as though losing those final pieces of her family erased the last reason to keep moving forward. Ethan had spent years believing compassion changed little in a harsh world, but that afternoon he refused to remain silent. He contacted an old friend who volunteered with a legal aid organization. Together, they uncovered errors within the debt transfer paperwork. Several claims had been filed incorrectly, and many possessions listed could not legally be taken. After days of exhausting paperwork and emotional uncertainty, the company quietly withdrew its demands. The victory seemed small to outsiders, but to Alara it restored something priceless. For the first time in months, she realized that someone had fought for her without expecting anything in return. Summer slowly unfolded across the countryside. The neglected farmhouse transformed into a place filled with fresh flowers, repaired fences, laughter from neighborhood children, and the comforting smell of homemade bread cooling near open kitchen windows. Ethan noticed he no longer dreaded returning home after work. Alara, meanwhile, accepted a position teaching art classes at the local community center, discovering that her forgotten talent for painting inspired children who struggled with confidence just as she once had. Still, emotional wounds rarely disappeared overnight. One afternoon, Ethan found Alara quietly sitting beneath an old maple tree holding her father's watch. She confessed through tears that every time life improved, guilt followed. She wondered whether moving forward meant leaving her father behind. Ethan understood that feeling better than anyone. He admitted he still avoided opening certain rooms inside the farmhouse because memories felt too painful. Together, they realized healing was never about forgetting those they loved. It was about carrying their love into a future they would have wanted to see. The seasons of their hearts changed long before either admitted it. Friendship became trust. Trust slowly became affection built not upon perfect moments, but upon shared scars. Neither rescued the other completely. Instead, they simply refused to let the other face darkness alone. If this story has touched your heart so far, please take a moment to leave a comment below and tell us where you're watching from or share a moment when someone showed you unexpected kindness. As autumn approached, the community gathered for the annual Harvest Festival beneath brilliant afternoon sunlight. Families laughed together while music echoed across the open fields. Ethan watched Alara helping children paint pumpkins, smiling more brightly than he had ever imagined possible. In that moment, he realized the farmhouse no longer felt haunted by loneliness. It had become a home again. If this story reminded you that compassion can truly change lives, please support Ripple of Love by liking, sharing, commenting, and subscribing. Your support helps more people discover stories that inspire hope, healing, and second chances. Months after arriving with nothing but a worn suitcase and fading hope, Alara walked beside Ethan across the same front porch where everything had begun. The flowers she planted now bloomed in vibrant colors beneath the clear afternoon sky. The field stretched endlessly into the distance, no longer representing isolation but possibility. Ethan finally understood that opening his door had also opened his own heart after years of silent grief. Alara discovered that losing everything had unexpectedly led her toward the family she never expected to find. Sometimes miracles do not arrive with dramatic speeches or impossible events. Sometimes they begin with one exhausted soul standing at a stranger's doorstep, whispering that there is nowhere left to go, and another broken soul quietly answering with the simplest words imaginable. Then stay with me. In a world that often teaches people to protect themselves first, the greatest courage may simply be making room for someone else's pain. And perhaps the strongest homes are not built from wood and stone alone, but from compassion freely given to those who believed they had already lost everything.